Whitley Strieber's journey into the world of extraterrestrial encounters is not just a personal experience. It's a story of societal skepticism, governmental intervention, and the profound consequences of challenging the status quo. His book Communion exploded into the public consciousness in 1987, detailing his terrifying abduction experiences. But what followed was even more chilling, both for him and for anyone who dared question the official narrative. The response from the government and the media painted a picture of a world struggling to comprehend something far beyond our understanding, while also attempting to suppress and discredit it. Strieber never expected Communion to become a worldwide phenomenon. When the book hit the shelves, he was still processing the overwhelming events that had unfolded in his life. His mind struggled to accept what had happened to him, and even after he finally admitted to himself that these encounters were real, he had no idea of the storm it would stir. The book was a deeply personal exploration of a reality that, for most, didn't exist. However, to Strieber's shock, it resonated with a large number of people. The book was an instant success, but it was the kind of success that made the authorities take notice. At first, the media's reception was cautiously optimistic. Some outlets gave the book a fair review, but this quickly shifted when the intelligence community and other powerful forces took an interest. It wasn't long before Strieber became the target of a systematic campaign to undermine his credibility. What started as a story of personal alien encounters morphed into a battle of perception, as the media became a tool for a much larger agenda, discrediting anyone who dared question the conventional narrative of UFOs and extraterrestrial life. The government's response was subtle, but effective. Behind the scenes, intelligence agencies worked tirelessly to shape public perception. The intelligence community has always been adept at controlling the flow of information, and when it comes to UFOs, they were in full control. Articles began to surface casting doubt on the reliability of lie detectors, questioning the efficacy of hypnosis, and undermining the credibility of people like Strieber, who dared to speak out about their experiences. Hypnosis, once a respected therapeutic tool, was now dismissed as unreliable. Lie detectors, which had long been used by law enforcement and intelligence agencies themselves, were suddenly portrayed as inconclusive and deceptive. This orchestrated campaign was not just about keeping Strieber quiet. It was about keeping the public in the dark. By controlling the narrative, they ensured that the truth about extraterrestrial encounters, or at least any alternative explanation, would remain hidden from the public eye. As Strieber traveled on his book tour, he was subjected to ridicule, and the media's tone turned from neutral to mocking. The infamous rectal probe jokes became a recurring theme. A deeply personal and traumatic experience was reduced to a punchline, turning Strieber into the butt of jokes on late-night talk shows. The very real trauma he had experienced was trivialized, and for decades, he was ridiculed by those who should have been seeking the truth, not perpetuating the lies. But this isn't just a story about one man's suffering or his quest for answers. It is a story of how the powers that be will stop at nothing to control what the public believes. Strieber's experiences with the visitors were not isolated. He was not the only one who had encountered these strange beings, but he became one of the most visible targets because he dared to speak out. And the government, with its vast resources and connections, used its influence to isolate him and others who shared similar experiences. Strieber also began to notice a pattern. The government and media were not just trying to discredit his experience. They were actively trying to suppress the entire phenomenon. The mainstream narrative sought to turn UFOs and alien encounters into either the realm of conspiracy theorists or fringe lunatics. It wasn't enough to simply dismiss the idea of aliens. They needed to discredit the very idea of questioning the status quo. Those who believed in extraterrestrial life were now the enemy, and the government would stop at nothing to ensure that such beliefs were not taken seriously. As Strieber dug deeper into his own research, he found that this wasn't just about controlling the narrative on a small scale. The UFO phenomenon had been a matter of national security for decades, and the government's response was one of secrecy and denial. It was no longer about finding out the truth. It was about keeping the public in the dark and preventing any disruption to the established order. The military-industrial complex, with its vast influence over the media, worked together to perpetuate a carefully crafted story that painted extraterrestrial encounters as nothing more than science fiction. But Strieber knew better. He had seen the visitors with his own eyes, and no amount of media manipulation would change that. There were times when Strieber felt a deep sense of isolation, but he never gave up on his quest for answers. As the years went by, he began to connect with other individuals who had experienced similar encounters. Slowly, he learned that there was a whole community of people who, like him, had witnessed something that couldn't be explained by conventional science. Yet, they too were ostracized by society, branded as crazies or paranoids. It was a difficult reality to accept, but Strieber realized that this shared experience was part of a much bigger picture. These encounters weren't just isolated events, they were happening to many people across the world. One of the most disturbing realizations Strieber came to was the government's ongoing involvement in manipulating the media to maintain control over the UFO narrative. This wasn't just about keeping people from learning the truth about extraterrestrial life. It was about maintaining power. Strieber saw how the intelligence community used its resources to turn what should have been a scientific and open discussion into a highly politicized issue. The very idea that intelligent beings from other worlds might be visiting Earth was seen as a threat to the current power structures. And so, the truth was suppressed. But even as the government and media worked to discredit his experiences, Strieber remained undeterred. He continued to write, speak, and share his story, despite the ridicule and the dangers that came with it. What kept him going was a deep sense of conviction. He knew that what he had experienced was real, and he wasn't about to let anyone take that truth away from him. His story resonated with millions of people around the world who had had similar experiences, and together, they formed a community that refused to remain silent any longer. As time passed, the media's attitude towards UFOs began to shift. Slowly, the public began to reconsider the possibility that there might be something to these sightings and encounters. The taboo around discussing extraterrestrial life started to erode, and more people began to come forward with their own stories. Strieber's bravery in sharing his experiences became a catalyst for a larger movement, one that sought to uncover the truth about the visitors and the government's role in hiding it. It wasn't just about aliens. It was about the human spirit. Strieber's journey wasn't just about encountering extraterrestrials, it was about resisting the forces that sought to keep the truth hidden. His story is one of defiance, resilience, and the pursuit of knowledge. It's a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the search for truth is something worth fighting for. And for the millions of people who had their own experiences, Strieber's story gave them hope that they weren't crazy, that they weren't alone, and that someday the truth would come to light. In the end, it's not just about aliens. It's about our ability to question the world around us, to challenge the narratives that are imposed upon us, and to seek the truth, no matter the cost. Strieber's story is one of courage, and it reminds us that sometimes the truth is worth fighting for, no matter how hard it is to accept. In the quiet stillness of his home, Whitley Strieber never imagined that his life would take a turn so extraordinary, so surreal, that it would defy everything he thought he knew about the world. What started as an encounter with what he thought were simple, though terrifying, creatures soon became an investigation into a profound and personal connection with beings not from this world. This is the story of Whitley's interactions with the visitors, those mysterious beings he first encountered in 1985. The visitors were not what Whitley expected. They were not the creatures of nightmares or the grotesque monsters that haunted his darkest thoughts. Instead, they were beings who, despite their strange appearance, seemed to communicate in ways beyond the realm of normal human understanding. Strieber's first encounters with these beings were far from comforting. Their large, dark eyes and otherworldly features made them terrifying at first glance. But as time went on, he began to realize something far more complex was unfolding. The visitors were not just beings from another planet. They were something more, something that went beyond the boundaries of what humans had always known. At first, Strieber didn't understand what he was dealing with. He initially thought these experiences were just bizarre dreams, the kind that occur when the mind becomes too weary. But as these encounters became more frequent, and as details began to emerge through hypnosis, he could no longer deny the truth. These beings were real, and they were reaching out to him. The relationship between Strieber and the visitors was not one of fear and aggression, but of something much deeper: curiosity, and perhaps an unspoken understanding. These beings, though vastly different from us in appearance, were trying to communicate with him in ways that transcended verbal language. The more he engaged with them, the more he realized that their form of communication was something beyond ordinary speech. It was not telepathy in the sense that most people would imagine it, but something much more abstract and powerful. It was as if they were sending not words, but entire concepts, ideas, and emotions directly into his mind. This was a language of connection that went beyond the barriers of language itself, a language of pure thought. Strieber often describes his experiences with the visitors as disorienting and at times frightening. Their presence was not always visible in the physical sense, yet there were unmistakable signs of their involvement. For instance, strange, unexplainable occurrences began happening around his home. He would hear soft tapping sounds on his porch, the sound of footsteps that he couldn't place. At times, he would find holes in the ground or tracks in the snow, evidence that something or someone had been there. These subtle hints weren't just signs of an alien presence. They were clues to something far more profound, something beyond the material world. In those moments of uncertainty, Strieber didn't feel entirely alone. Though the visitors were not always physically present, there was a certain familiarity to their energy that gave him a sense of connection. And though the experiences were overwhelming at times, there was also a strange sense of peace that came with them. They were not threatening or violent, but curious and patient. They seemed to understand that Strieber, like all humans, needed time to come to terms with what was happening. And so, they waited patiently and persistently. What makes Strieber's experiences so fascinating is the way they challenge our understanding of reality itself. He often found himself questioning what was real and what wasn't, as the visitor's presence blurred the lines between the physical world and something else entirely. These beings were not just visitors from another world. They were part of a larger, more complex system that transcended time and space. Strieber's connection with them felt more like an awakening, a shift in consciousness that opened his mind to new possibilities. It was as if they were guiding him, helping him to remember something that had been lost to human memory for ages. One of the most striking aspects of Strieber's relationship with the visitors is how it evolved over time. Initially, his encounters were sporadic and often frightening, filled with confusion and terror. But as he spent more time reflecting on his experiences, he began to realize that the visitors weren't just there to observe him. They were offering him something. They were offering him a deeper understanding of the universe and his place in it. These beings weren't just interested in probing his mind. They were helping him expand it, pushing him to see the world in a way that few people ever could. Strieber began to feel as though he was part of something much larger, something that stretched across the cosmos and beyond the boundaries of time. This realization was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. On the one hand, he felt a deep sense of wonder at the idea that there were other beings in the universe, beings who had the ability to shape his perception of reality. On the other hand, the sheer magnitude of this revelation was overwhelming. How could he, an ordinary man, possibly understand what these visitors wanted from him? And what did they want from humanity as a whole? There were times when Strieber felt a sense of hopelessness. How could he, with his limited understanding of the universe, ever truly comprehend the nature of these beings? And yet, there were also moments of deep connection. He would sit alone in the woods, meditating in a stone circle, and feel the presence of the visitors all around him. It wasn't just their physical presence that he felt, it was their energy, their essence. It was as though they were communicating with him not through words, but through pure emotion, through the very fabric of his being. In these moments, Strieber felt both small and incredibly powerful, as though he were tapping into something ancient and eternal. In the years following his encounters, Strieber came to understand that the visitors were not just extraterrestrials, they were something more. They were a reflection of humanity's own potential, a reminder that there is more to existence than meets the eye. They were, in a sense, a mirror that reflected the deepest parts of himself, parts that had long been forgotten or ignored. Through his connection with the visitors, Strieber began to see the world in a new light. He began to understand that the boundaries between life and death, between the physical and the metaphysical, were not as fixed as he had once believed. There was an undeniable sense of mystery that surrounded the visitors. No matter how much Strieber learned, he could never fully understand them. But this mystery, rather than being a source of fear, became a source of fascination. The visitors were not there to provide all the answers. Instead, they were there to encourage questions, to push humanity to think beyond the limitations of what was known. It was as if they were trying to help humanity rediscover something that had been lost to time. For Strieber, his relationship with the visitors was not just about the physical encounters or the strange, unexplainable phenomena that occurred around him. It was about a deeper, more personal connection, one that transcended the physical world and reached into the very core of his being. The visitors weren't just aliens. They were teachers, guides, and fellow travelers on the journey of discovery. And though their presence was at times disorienting and frightening, Strieber came to realize that they were helping humanity find its place in a much larger, much more complex universe. This connection with the visitors is one that Strieber continues to explore in his work, and it's a journey that continues to challenge his understanding of the world and his place within it. The visitors may be mysterious, and their true nature may never be fully understood, but their presence in Strieber's life has fundamentally changed him, and it has changed the way he sees the world. Through his experiences, Strieber has come to understand that the universe is full of mysteries, some of which we may never fully comprehend. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to understand them. After all, as Strieber's journey shows us, it's in the pursuit of answers that we find the most profound discoveries. For those who may still be skeptical, Strieber's story is not one of simple fantasy or wild imagination. It's a testament to the power of curiosity, the importance of questioning the world around us, and the unshakable belief that there is always more to discover, no matter how strange or unsettling it may seem. The visitors may not be here to give us all the answers, but they are certainly here to encourage us to ask the right questions. And that, in itself, is a gift worth cherishing. In the stillness of the night, when the world around us seems to fall into quiet slumber, there lies a hidden dimension, a place not bound by the physical laws we know, but governed by the invisible forces of the mind. Whitley Strieber, a man who once walked among us as an ordinary person, began to uncover this hidden realm, one where telepathy and supernatural abilities stretched the limits of human understanding. For many of us, especially those who have lived through decades of experience, the idea that the mind could transcend the body's limits is difficult to grasp. After all, our senses are designed to understand the world through touch, sight, and sound. Yet, Strieber's journey into the world of the unknown reveals that there's far more to our existence than what meets the eye. The most astonishing aspect of his experience was the way his mind began to bridge the gap between physical reality and the mysterious realm of telepathy, an ability to communicate without words, simply by thought alone. Let's imagine, for a moment, how it would feel to have a thought that could be heard by another, without a single sound leaving your mouth. What if the very thoughts you have could be shared instantly with someone miles away? It sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? But Strieber's personal journey forces us to reconsider what we thought we knew about the limits of the human mind. Whitley Strieber wasn't always aware of his telepathic abilities. He wasn't born with an understanding of the mind's vast potential. In fact, the experience that unlocked this dimension for him began in an unassuming way. After his terrifying encounter with the visitors, the beings that altered his life, forever, Strieber began to notice subtle changes in his perception. He describes it as a gradual shift, a movement from the realm of the ordinary into something far more enigmatic. As his experiences with these visitors unfolded, Strieber realized he wasn't just seeing strange creatures, but rather, his mind was expanding in ways he never anticipated. He could sense things beyond ordinary comprehension. Thoughts, emotions, and ideas began to penetrate his consciousness without any external cues. It wasn't as if he could simply read minds. It was deeper, more profound. He felt as though he was connected to something greater, something that transcended the material world. This ability was something that many of us, especially those of us who have lived through a lifetime of experiences, might find difficult to accept. But Strieber's story is a window into a world where the boundaries of our understanding are pushed, and where the lines between the conscious and the unconscious blur in ways we can't explain with current science. It raises important questions. What if telepathy is real, and we just haven't learned how to harness it yet? What if our minds, when freed from the constraints of everyday life, can connect in ways we never dreamed possible? It's easy to be skeptical about something that seems so far removed from our day-to-day experiences. In a world where our senses are our primary means of understanding, the idea that thought itself could be transmitted directly from one person to another is almost too strange to consider. But Strieber's encounters suggest that there are indeed forces at play, forces that exist beyond the scope of ordinary perception. He discovered this through his experiences with these mysterious beings who communicated not with words, but with images, sensations, and feelings that bypassed the limits of language. It wasn't just communication, it was a deep, visceral exchange that felt both alien and familiar at the same time. This concept of telepathic communication taps into something much deeper than just the transfer of information. It speaks to a shared human desire for connection, for understanding, and for intimacy. Imagine how much closer we could feel to one another if we could experience someone else's thoughts, if we could understand each other's emotions without the barrier of words. It's a powerful notion, one that strikes at the very heart of what it means to be human. Strieber's experiences, though they may seem fantastical to some, offer us a glimpse into a future where our minds could be free from the confines of spoken language, where understanding flows effortlessly and directly between individuals. His story challenges the conventional notion that our thoughts are private and isolated. Instead, it proposes the possibility that we are all connected in ways we can't yet perceive, that the limits of communication are not as rigid as we once thought, and yet, despite the incredible potential of telepathy, there is a dark side to this newfound ability. Strieber recalls moments of deep fear, moments when he felt completely overwhelmed by the power of these new sensations. Imagine hearing someone else's thoughts invading your own mind, or sensing emotions so strongly that they take over your own feelings. The mind, when exposed to such a raw and filtered exchange, can feel like a battlefield where the boundaries between self and other are no longer clear. Strieber's narrative is filled with moments of tension and uncertainty. As he grapples with his newfound abilities and the realization that the line between his own thoughts and those of others is becoming increasingly blurred for those of us who have lived long enough to experience the complexities of relationships and communication. This concept of telepathic connection may stir up a mix of emotions. On one hand, it offers a sense of freedom, the ability to communicate without barriers, without misunderstandings. But on the other hand, it forces us to confront the reality of vulnerability. If we could know each other's innermost thoughts, would we still feel comfortable in our relationships? Could we handle the raw honesty of a world where every thought is laid bare? As Strieber continues to explore this telepathic world, he begins to understand that these abilities are not just a gift, they are a responsibility. The visitors, as he calls them, didn't just come to share knowledge. They came to challenge humanity to evolve. Strieber believes that telepathy and other supernatural abilities represent a new frontier for humanity, one where our minds can be fully awakened to the mysteries of the universe. This isn't just a story of alien encounters. It's a story of human evolution, of awakening to a deeper understanding of our true potential. Strieber's experiences also introduce the idea of soul connection, the notion that our minds, when liberated from the limitations of the physical world, can connect with something far beyond the material plane. He often speaks of feeling a connection to a higher, more expansive form of consciousness, a force that transcends life and death. In his exploration of telepathy, Strieber touches on the profound truth that our minds, and indeed our souls, are capable of far more than we can currently comprehend. His journey is one of discovery, but also one of transformation. Through these experiences, he realizes that the universe is not a cold, indifferent place. It is alive with possibility, with potential, and with connection. As you read this, you might wonder, what if this is real? What if we too have the ability to connect in this way? Perhaps we have only just begun to tap into the true power of our minds, and the discoveries Strieber describes are just the beginning. For many of us, particularly those who have lived long lives and seen the world change in ways we never imagined, the idea that there is more to existence than meets the eye is both thrilling and terrifying. Telepathy, as Strieber describes it, is not just an ability, it's a doorway to a new understanding of reality, a new way of connecting with others and with the world around us. It is a reminder that we are not isolated beings, but part of something far greater than ourselves. And as we open ourselves to the possibility of this new reality, we begin to see the world in a different light, a world where communication is no longer limited by words, a world where understanding flows freely, and a world where our minds are free to explore the limitless expanse of the universe. In recent years, there has been an increasing sense of uncertainty surrounding the future of our planet. Whether it is the ever-present threat of climate change, political unrest, or the rapid advancements in technology, many of us, especially older generations, have watched with concern as the world seems to shift beneath our feet. For some, this may feel like an unsettling period, as though we are standing on the edge of an unknown precipice, uncertain about what comes next. But what if the world we know is on the brink of a profound transformation, one that we have yet to fully understand, yet are undeniably a part of? What if there is something beyond the natural world waiting to awaken in us, or perhaps even among us? This idea, though daunting, is one that Whitley Strieber explores deeply in his recent book, The Fourth Mind. Strieber, a man who has lived through inexplicable encounters with what he calls the visitors, firmly believes that humanity is approaching a dramatic turning point in our existence. It is a change that stretches far beyond mere environmental or technological shifts. This change involves a rediscovery of our true potential, of ancient abilities that have been buried deep within us for centuries. The challenge, however, is that many of us, especially older generations who have lived through decades of conventional thinking, are not yet prepared for the profound alterations that will soon unfold. Imagine, for a moment, that you are walking through your familiar neighborhood, surrounded by the comforts of your daily life. Yet, in the distance, you sense a change in the air, an unseen shift, a quiet hum that seems to vibrate just beneath the surface. For many of us, this sensation may feel like a warning. Perhaps we feel an instinctual pull toward something bigger than ourselves, a change that is as inevitable as the changing seasons. The beauty of Strieber's message is that he invites us to explore this feeling, to embrace the mystery of what lies ahead with curiosity rather than fear. Strieber suggests that this change is not just an external force. It is something we will experience together as a collective, but also something deeply personal. He likens it to a form of spiritual or cognitive awakening, a rediscovery of abilities that we once had, abilities like telepathy, levitation, and a deeper understanding of consciousness. It may sound fantastical, even impossible, but Strieber insists that the evidence is undeniable. He believes that humanity is being called to remember these abilities, which are already embedded deep within our DNA, and that we are approaching a time when these abilities will resurface. However, it is not all peaceful optimism. Strieber also emphasizes that this awakening comes with a cost. For humanity to fully realize its potential, we must first face the deep fears and uncertainties that have been ingrained in us over centuries. These fears stem from our reluctance to embrace the unknown, to let go of the comfortable, predictable world we have built for ourselves. As Strieber writes in his book, the veil between life and death is thin, and as we approach this transformation, it may just fall completely away. This is where the emotional core of Strieber's message resonates most profoundly with older generations. Many of us, especially those who have lived through times of war, civil unrest, or personal loss, are more attuned to the fragility of life. We understand that things change, sometimes suddenly, sometimes painfully. But Strieber's message is not one of despair. Instead, it is a call to see the potential for growth and renewal, even in the face of uncertainty. As we age, it is easy to become entrenched in our ways, to feel that the world has already passed us by. Yet Strieber offers a message of hope. This is not the end, but a new beginning. Our lives are not merely about what we have experienced, but about what we have yet to learn and understand. Consider this: in many ancient cultures, particularly those of the Native American and ancient Egyptian traditions, the idea of the veil between the living and the dead is a concept deeply ingrained in their spiritual beliefs. The veil represents the boundary between this world and the next, a thin membrane that separates us from the unknown. Strieber believes that this veil is beginning to dissolve, and as it does, we will come face to face with something far greater than we could have ever imagined. This could mean encountering beings from other realms, or perhaps finally tapping into the latent abilities within us that have always been there, waiting to be awakened. But how does this change happen? What triggers it? According to Strieber, this transformation will not occur in the distant future. It is already happening. For those of us who have lived through periods of rapid change, whether it was the cultural upheaval of the 1960s or the technological revolution of the past few decades, we know that change can feel disorienting at first. But Strieber suggests that the tipping point is fast approaching. The accelerating pace of climate change, technological advances like artificial intelligence, and the growing awareness of extraterrestrial life and phenomena are all signs that we are on the cusp of something extraordinary. But there is a catch. Not everyone will be ready for it. This is where Strieber's message takes on an even more personal dimension. He believes that only those who are willing to shed their old beliefs, who are prepared to look beyond the material world, will be able to fully embrace the change that is coming. It is not a question of age, but of mindset. Those who are open to the possibility of new realities will find themselves on the cutting edge of this new evolution, while others may resist, clinging to the familiar ways of thinking that have served them for a lifetime. For those who are open to it, however, this time of transformation offers immense potential for freedom, and discovery. Strieber's belief in the resurgence of human abilities like telepathy and levitation suggests that we are about to experience an era in which we no longer have to rely solely on technology and material resources to solve our problems. Instead, we'll rediscover our innate connection to one another and to the world around us. This is a vision of humanity as we were always meant to be connected, intuitive, and aware of the subtle energies that bind us together. But Strieber also warns that this awakening will not be easy. It will be a time of testing, a time when humanity will face its greatest challenges. There will be moments of doubt, fear, and even grief. We will be forced to confront the parts of ourselves we have long ignored or suppressed. Yet, Strieber believes that this is necessary for our evolution. Just as a caterpillar must go through the dark, uncertain stages of metamorphosis before it emerges as a butterfly, we too must undergo this transformation. The world we know may crumble, but in its place will rise something far more powerful and connected. And in the end, Strieber's message is one of hope. It is an invitation to step into a future that we can shape together. For those of us who are older, who have seen the world change in ways we never imagined, this is not a time to retreat into fear or resignation. Instead, it is a time to embrace the unknown with curiosity and courage. We have already lived through so much, and now, as the veil begins to lift, we are being called to live through something even greater. It is an opportunity to rediscover our true selves, to reconnect with the mysteries of the universe, and to leave behind the fear and doubt that have held us back for far too long. In conclusion, Strieber's message offers us a compelling vision of the future, a future filled with unknowns, but also with immense potential for growth, connection, and understanding. It is a time when the boundaries between life and death, between the physical and the spiritual, will blur, and we will finally have the chance to realize the extraordinary abilities that have always been within us. Whether we choose to embrace it or not, the transformation is coming. The question is, will we be ready for it? Whitley Strieber's journey through the mysterious and terrifying world of UFO encounters took him beyond the realms of earthly understanding. But amidst the alien experiences and encounters with extraterrestrial beings, there was one recurring theme that continued to surface: the connection between death and rebirth. As a man who had been thrust into a reality that most could not even begin to fathom, Strieber began to see a deeper truth, one that reached beyond the physical world, extending into the afterlife and the very fabric of human consciousness. One of the most profound experiences Whitley Strieber had, after years of contact with extraterrestrial visitors, was a moment that challenged his understanding of life, death, and everything in between. As he struggled to make sense of his encounters, Strieber began to notice something unsettling. The visitors, these alien entities, were not merely interested in Earth or in humanity's existence. They seemed deeply attuned to the very essence of life and death itself. His own interactions with them, though often bewildering and frightening, began to reveal profound spiritual truths. In the midst of all his abduction experiences, Strieber found himself confronted with the possibility that death might not be the end as we understand it. He found that the visitors appeared to hold some knowledge of the afterlife, and through their communication with him, he became increasingly aware of how our perceptions of life and death are far more intertwined than we often think. The dead were still present, not as mere memories or figments of the past, but as active, conscious beings. It was as though a veil between life and death had begun to lift, offering a glimpse into something far greater and more mysterious than what we typically imagine. One of Strieber's most memorable experiences related to this was a seemingly unremarkable event that turned out to be far more significant than he could have ever realized. He began to feel a presence in his home, a presence that felt warm, familiar, and deeply comforting. It was as if the spirit of someone dear to him had returned. At first, he tried to dismiss it, thinking it was simply the lingering memory of a loved one. but soon the presence became unmistakable. Strieber's wife, Annie, had passed away years earlier, and yet this inexplicable energy in their home felt like a message, a communication from the other side. The unmistakable signs an ethereal moth fluttering around the room became a recurring symbol, a bridge between the living and the dead. It was in this moment that Strieber realized that death was not an end, but rather a continuation. The veil that separated the realms of the living and the deceased began to dissolve. He knew that his wife, though physically gone, was still present in a way he could not entirely explain. This experience was both unsettling and comforting. It was as if the laws of physics and time no longer applied in the way he once understood them. The dead were not distant memories locked away in the past. They were part of an ongoing, fluid existence. And the visitors, these alien beings, were intimately connected with this transition. They seemed to understand the cyclical nature of life and death perhaps better than humans ever could. As Strieber continued to explore these strange occurrences, he began to realize that the visitors were not just visitors from another planet. They were messengers, guides, or even intermediaries between the living and the dead. They seemed to be showing him that death, like life, was part of a much larger cosmic dance, a process of continuous transformation, rebirth, and growth. The visitors themselves were not bound by the same limitations of time and space that we are, and their physical bodies seemed to be tools or avatars, not unlike suits or vessels that they used to interact with the human world. In one particularly surreal moment, Strieber found himself in a place where the boundaries between life and death seemed to fade entirely. He experienced a moment of transcendence that led him to the very core of his being. He found himself outside of his physical body, existing in a form that was lighter, freer, more connected to the world around him. In this disembodied state, he was able to experience the moment of his first steps as a child, something he had long since forgotten. It was as though he had transcended time itself and was able to witness his life from a new perspective, a perspective that was no longer limited to the material world. But this experience was not without its challenges. Strieber was left to grapple with the deep, unsettling truth that death might not be the conclusion of our journey, but rather just another phase. His mind struggled to comprehend this revelation. Could we, as humans, exist beyond the confines of our bodies? Were we simply spiritual beings inhabiting temporary physical forms? And if so, what did that mean for our understanding of life, death, and our purpose on this planet? For Strieber, the journey to understanding death and rebirth was deeply personal, but it also carried universal implications. Through his connection with the visitors, he began to see that the human experience was not isolated. It was part of a grander, cosmic plan, a plan that stretched far beyond the confines of earthly existence. It was as if the visitors had been sent not just to show humanity its potential, but to teach it the most fundamental lesson of all, that life is not a singular event, but a continuous cycle. And death is just another step on that eternal journey. The idea that death is not the end is one that many people, especially older generations, may find comforting in their own lives. Strieber's experiences offer hope to those who may be nearing the end of their earthly journey, or who have lost loved ones. The notion that death is not a permanent separation, but rather a transition into a different form of existence, is a powerful and uplifting message. Strieber's story challenges us to rethink our understanding of life's limitations and encourages us to consider the possibility of an existence beyond what we can see and touch. For those of us who are nearing the end of our own life, or who have lost loved ones, the thought of an afterlife where the boundaries between the living and the deceased are no longer so distinct can bring peace. It is a comforting thought, one that provides a sense of continuity, connection, and hope. Perhaps, as Strieber suggests, the veil that separates us from the afterlife is thinner than we think, and those who have passed before us are still present, guiding and watching over us in ways we may not fully understand. As Strieber continues to explore the mysteries of life, death, and the unknown, he encourages us all to remain open to the possibility of something greater than what we know. In a world where science and spirituality often seem at odds, Strieber's experiences offer a bridge between the two, suggesting that the universe is far more complex and mysterious than we can imagine. And perhaps, just perhaps, there is a deeper connection between life, death, and rebirth that we have yet to fully understand. In the end, Strieber's message is one of hope, exploration, and transcendence. Through his personal experiences with the visitors, he has come to understand that death is not a final destination, but rather a part of the ongoing cycle of life. And as we age and face the inevitable, it is a message that resonates deeply, offering comfort, understanding, and a sense of peace in the face of the unknown. For Strieber, and for all of us, the journey is far from over. It is a journey that stretches across the boundaries of time, space, and existence itself. And with every step, we come closer to understanding the truth about life, death, and the eternal cycle of rebirth. Objective Love, a journey into the heart of the unknown. Whitley Strieber's journey into the world of extraterrestrial encounters is one that defies conventional understanding. However, beyond the accounts of alien abductions and the terrifying unknowns of otherworldly visits, Strieber introduces a profound concept that touches the heart of human existence: objective love. It's a term that may sound unfamiliar to many, but its meaning is profound, especially when we consider our own relationships and experiences. To understand objective love, we must first journey through Strieber's personal experiences and then explore how this concept can shift the way we perceive love, existence, and even the universe. For many of us, love is a simple concept, often equated with the emotions we feel for family, friends, or even a romantic partner. It's what we hold dear, the ties that bind us to one another. But in the vastness of life's mysteries, love can be something far greater, something beyond the emotional connection we have with others. Strieber's experiences with the visitors, the extraterrestrial beings he encountered during his life, led him to understand that love is not confined to the boundaries of our physical existence. Instead, love is an ever-present force that connects all things, from the smallest particle to the vast cosmos. Imagine this. You've spent most of your life grounded in the familiar, your daily routines, your relationships, your experiences. But then, something extraordinary happens. Something that completely shatters your understanding of what is real. You're thrust into a new world, a world where the rules you've known no longer apply. Strieber's encounter with the visitors was not just a moment of fear or confusion. It was a moment of awakening. The beings he encountered were not here simply to scare him. They were trying to communicate something far deeper, the nature of love itself. Strieber's experiences with the visitors were, at first, terrifying. He found himself in situations where he was physically and emotionally vulnerable, encountering entities that seemed so different from anything he had ever known. However, what Strieber discovered in these encounters was a deeper layer of reality, a connection that goes beyond the fear and chaos of the unknown. This connection, he argues, is what he now calls objective love. What is objective love, and why is it so important? To understand this, let's step away from the idea of love as a personal feeling we have for others, and instead look at love as a universal force, a force that binds all of existence together, irrespective of time, space, or the physical bodies we inhabit. This concept challenges our traditional views of love, pushing us to see it as more than just an emotion or a connection to those we cherish. Strieber came to realize that the visitors, these beings that came from beyond our world, were not here to harm us. Instead, they were here to show us that love transcends our earthly understanding. They were communicating a love that was detached from the physical limitations of the body, a love that exists on a spiritual and metaphysical level. This idea of objective love can be difficult to grasp, especially when we are so accustomed to viewing love through a personal lens. For many of us, love is something that exists between two people. It's something we give and receive, something that defines the relationships in our lives. But what if love were not limited by the boundaries of our physical bodies? What if it were a force that connected us to the universe, to the stars, to the very fabric of existence itself? Strieber's exploration of objective love leads him to a profound realization. Our traditional understanding of love is but a small fraction of a far greater truth. This truth is the idea that we, as human beings, are connected to everything around us, both seen and unseen, through a force of love that is far greater than we can comprehend. The visitors, Strieber believes, were not simply alien beings. They were part of this larger cosmic web of love, and they were trying to show humanity that we too are part of this greater network. Now, you might be wondering, how does this all relate to your own life? For those of us who have lived through decades of relationships, challenges, and triumphs, this idea of objective love can be both comforting and unsettling. It challenges us to rethink the way we view our connection to others, our place in the universe, and the very nature of our existence. The concept of objective love asks us to let go of the idea that love is something confined to our physical existence, and instead invites us to consider the possibility that love is a force that transcends life and death. For many of us in the later years of life, it can be easy to become disillusioned or to feel disconnected from the world around us. We have seen the world change, perhaps in ways we never expected. Yet, the idea of objective love offers hope. It suggests that, even in our darkest moments, even when we feel alone or misunderstood, we are never truly separated from the love that binds us to everything. In fact, as we age, we might find ourselves becoming more attuned to this greater understanding of love as we reflect on our experiences and relationships over the years. As Strieber continued his journey of discovery, he realized that the visitors were not merely passing through his life. They were part of a much larger cosmic plan. They were teaching him to see beyond the physical and emotional limitations of love and to embrace a deeper, more universal truth. This truth, as he discovered, is that love is not just something we feel for others. It is a force that unites us with everything, with the stars, with the universe itself. It is a force that cannot be contained by the boundaries of the body, the mind, or even time itself. For those of us who have lived a long life, this revelation can be both exciting and overwhelming. It challenges us to look beyond the day-to-day struggles and to embrace the idea that love is not confined to what we can see and touch. It invites us to connect with something greater, something that transcends the limitations of our earthly experience. Strieber's exploration of objective love is not just a spiritual or philosophical journey. It is a call to action. It urges us to reconsider the way we view the world and to embrace the love that connects us to all things. It asks us to look beyond the superficial and to see love in its purest form as a force that binds us to the universe and to one another in ways we cannot yet fully understand. But there is something else here, something that adds a layer of intrigue and excitement to this story. Strieber's experiences suggest that the visitors are not simply trying to teach us about love. They are trying to help us remember something we have forgotten. They are urging us to rediscover the knowledge of our true nature and to embrace a deeper connection with the cosmos. This idea of objective love is not just a concept for the spiritual or the philosophical. It is something that can change the way we live our lives right now. As we grow older, we may find ourselves reflecting on the meaning of our lives, our relationships, and our place in the world. The idea of objective love offers us a new perspective, a way to see love not as something limited to the physical realm, but as a force that transcends time and space. It challenges us to embrace a new understanding of love that can bring us peace, connection, and a sense of purpose as we move forward in life. In the end, objective love is not just a concept. It is a revelation, a new way of seeing the world and our place in it. It is a reminder that even in the face of the unknown, love is always present. It connects us, guides us, and ultimately leads us to a greater understanding of who we are and where we belong in this vast and mysterious universe. And for those of us who have lived through many years, this realization offers a deep sense of comfort and hope as we continue our journey through life.